Welcome to the Recovery Stories podcast, bringing you stories of hope, healing, and triumph over the bondage of addictions, mental health struggles, trauma, and dysfunctional family systems. Our courageous storytellers have chosen to live their journey out loud in order to show others that they don't have to suffer in silence. The stories you will hear are raw, real, and may involve graphic and triggering content. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or are ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 877-351-7504 or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm so excited to kick things off today on Recovery Stories. We have a special guest today visiting us for the first time, friend, colleague in behavioral health, fellow Nashvilleian, Ashley Franklin. I'm so glad to have you here today. Thank you for showing up and being vulnerable and willing to speak.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, so my intro for you is that you're a fellow person in recovery, a therapist here in Nashville, and one of my favorite things about you is your humor. So my husband and I have really enjoyed connecting with and following you on your social media pages through the pandemic, because you've done a lot of memeing that has gotten some traction. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Clearly, humor is something that you have a knack at and also have found as useful. So I wanted to ask you, how has humor been a tool for survival for you, and how do you see it as a healing thing?
Let me think. I think that for me, humor has pretty much saved me a lot of times, because the most ridiculous things happen to you when you're drinking or when you're sober or in recovery, or there's just so many stories that you're like, this cannot be real life. Like, this cannot be real life. And if you can't look back on it and laugh, I don't know what people do who don't do that. So when I finally found sobriety, I was still that ridiculous person. Like, I still laugh at everything. And I think memes and Instagram and a little bit of Facebook, it's just been an outlet for me to be silly and find people who laughed at the same stupid things I did. And I don't know, it's been a tool because I feel like it's kind of saved our sanities in some way. 2020 was a tough one for everybody.
Yeah.
And I also don't have a partner or anything right now. I am a single mom, and I also am very boring. And so in real life, so in 2020, humor was like the best thing I could do.
Yeah.
It was fun. It gave me something to do. I'd say Instagram's my part-time job that I do not get paid for. And it usually happens about 2 a.m. So
I love it. Well, it's definitely cheering a lot of people up, and I think bringing people together. And I know been a relief from some heartache and some of the real heaviness from political to medical to all the BS over the last year.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for that. I know I've definitely enjoyed it. Can you tell our viewers and listeners how they might be able to connect with you if they want to check out your page?
Absolutely. Instagram, I'm Yay, it's me. YAAY, it's me. So yes, I would love people to follow me.
Cool. Y'all check it out. It'll bring you some good laughs. So let's get into your story. I want to know about your early life, what it was like. Where'd you grow up? What was your family dynamic like?
Okay. I know that a lot of people's stories have a lot of real trauma in childhood. I didn't. I had a very wonderful set of parents who, stayed married. My father passed away a few years ago, but I can genuinely say they're both two of the most wonderful people I'll ever know. My family, I have an older brother who's 4 years older than me, Adam, and we were typical, kids. We didn't live like in a neighborhood. We were kind of on a busy highway in between two cities or little towns. I grew up in West Tennessee, a very small town called Milan.
Oh yeah.
And do you know Milan?
Oh, I'm not like all familiar with it or anything, but I have through the process of just meeting people, living my whole life here and everything. I have met a number of people from Milan. Couldn't tell you who they were, but
I probably wouldn't know them. But so my childhood was great. It was very innocent and very loved. I felt very loved. I knew my parents were there for me. Like I said, we lived on kind of a busy highway. And so what I saw a lot of my parents were that they would do anything for anybody, because we connected, that highway connected two towns. Cars would break down, people would run out of gas, and my parents, it wouldn't matter what time of night, people would inevitably come to our house, and my parents would help them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would have done anything for anybody. My brother and I, we got along, but like typical brother-sister stuff. Now that we're adults, we're very close. He lives on the other side of the world, known as Hermitage. And so we don't see each other all the time, but we are very close. He's been very supportive. I had a typical childhood. I had good friends. I didn't get into trouble much. I respected my parents. I was also, back in that day, you were also kind of scared of your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they were going to do anything bad, but
you just fear.
You just knew you were going to enjoy a healthy fear. Yeah. Thank you. So I wasn't very rebellious, like literally.
Yeah.
It was just a normal childhood to me.
So can I ask you what then was your first exposure to someone to mental health struggles and or addiction? So was it direct or indirect? When were you aware that it was something that people struggle with?
It was indirect, and I don't remember how old I was. My parents both came from really bad childhoods. They both suffered. My mom's father was an alcoholic, and he was abusive to my grandmother. I've never met him. I think he passed away the year before I was born. But, my grandmother, raised 3 children, and mom was the middle of 3 with 2 brothers. And one of her brothers had alcohol issues. I don't remember how young I was. I think it was a very early adolescence, maybe 12, where he went to treatment, and we visited him at Cumberland Heights. This was I don't even remember what year. So indirectly, I knew that people had issues and suffered with some, I didn't even know to call it addiction back then, but also people didn't really talk about it. My grandmother had, earlier in her life, like midlife, had issues with prescription pills. Mm-hmm. I knew that kind of, but I didn't really know that. We just didn't talk about it. My dad's, maybe not addiction, but just mental health issues. Mm-hmm. His stepmother had a lot of mental health issues. We knew that she wasn't a very happy person, but we didn't know what that meant. And we knew that sometimes he would be uncomfortable after they had a conversation, or she wouldn't talk to him for a year, but nobody talked about it. That was a huge thing in my, I think, adolescence and growing up. And part of the reason now I talk about real struggles is because not that people dismissed struggles, but you did not talk about things that happened in your family.
Yeah.
You know, my parents came from abusive mental health issues, substance abuse issues, not them, but their family, you know, their parents. And they married and decided to do family differently.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that. But I still didn't know much about their histories.
Mm.
Um, so,
So the
so
first,
even
did you say you were 12 when your brother went to treatment, or he was 12?
I said my uncle,
Uncle, sorry.
my mom's brother.
Yeah.
So I was about 12, I think, and he went to Cumberland Heights.
Gotcha.
That's the first time I ever knew that anybody went somewhere to deal with substance abuse issues. I had
Other
no
than that,
idea.
it was pull up by your bootstraps and get your save face and make sure you
Right.
looked right.
And don't talk about it.
Yep. Yeah.
I didn't know, and this is not about substance abuse, but I didn't know there were, you know, some things that parents just don't talk about, I guess. And I didn't know that my grandmother, like my dad's mother, was not his biological mother until I was like in high school. And I found a copy of our family tree, and I was like, why does it say Helen or something right here? Grandma's name's Eva. And they were like, oh, she's his stepmom. But then it was, oh, what? And then no more talking about it, you know?
Yeah.
So it wasn't really talked about that any of our family history were difficult or struggles or changes like that. And I'm sure it was because to them it wasn't a big deal. You know, it wasn't anything to talk about. But I think that's why I do talk about it now. Everything.
Yeah.
You know, very transparent, because I want my daughter to grow up and know that things like this run in her family history and have to be aware of them.
Yeah. I'm grateful for the time that we live in now. There's been so much work. There's still a lot to be done, but there's so much traction has been made. And I think more and more people are feeling safe enough to embrace therapy, the darkness of their past, come out from the umbrella of shame. And you know, we talk about a lot on this podcast. One of the best ways that we as humans can connect with each other is over our mistakes and our just what has happened in life and where we've grown from. And but in decades past, that this was, you know, these weren't things people did ever, you know, at all costs. And I think so many of us can identify with what you're talking about from you know, either our parents or the generation behind that. And so moving forward in your trajectory, tell us about what you know, where was it that you got caught up in?
Where things fell apart? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't. I didn't struggle with alcohol or anything until I was way into my 30s. I had, I maybe experimented. Our high school was very small, and you were more scared of getting a reputation for doing something bad, like drinking or whatever. So I didn't do a lot of that. I didn't want to have a bad name,
Yeah.
So I didn't. Maybe some wine coolers here or there, but and then in college, I didn't drink excessively. I did drink, but not a lot. Just I don't want to say normal, because
well, in college it is normal. I mean, people.
Yeah.
It's
well,
normal.
But I'll say most of my college, I went to UT Knoxville my freshman year of college.
Yeah.
And quickly got swallowed up. I was not ready for that level of so many people. I didn't know who I was, and I just kind of got overwhelmed. And so I came home after my freshman year. And so my college experience wasn't like everybody else's, because I lived at home and commuted to Jackson to Lambeth University. And so I didn't even have that full experience as being like on campus. that, I still enjoyed it, but,
Mm-hmm.
so, and then I went to grad school that's when I moved to Nashville in 2001 and started, my master's in social work, and thoroughly knew that was what I was here for. I knew I was here to help people. And I think I knew it for a long time. I just didn't know how that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But, after I was in grad school, I quickly realized, like, I just want to do counseling and work with kids and adults and whatever. So
So
I
back
had,
up here, I want to have you share something that I feel like a lot of people don't know. And I love talking about social work and the social work degree because so many of my great friends and colleagues, that's the route of education they went. And so many people don't understand, because I think unless you've directly been interacted with the social work, with social work as we historically hear about it, or a social worker, people don't know that the social work degree, and so many people who become licensed clinical social workers, it's this broad umbrella of experience that you get and training, and you become a licensed mental health professional if you choose to do so, just like some of the other paths. So can you share a little bit about why you chose social work, what you thought you were going to do with it? And clearly we know you ended up being a therapist, but just kind of talk about that a little bit.
I'm so glad you said that. I haven't thought about it like that in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I was very lucky. My advisor in college talked to me about social work. Didn't know anything about social work. I was like, I'm going to be a counselor, so I need to get a master's in psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And he had his doctorate, and he was very truthful about what you could do with a psychology degree. And then he said, but what I would ask you to look into is social work. I was like, I don't even know what that means. But he told me how broad it was. You can do counseling, you can do hospital, assessment, you can do school work, you can do management. It doesn't have to be clinical. There's so many things you can do. And so once I looked into that program, I was like, oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
this is what I have to do. And I know there's other avenues to doing therapy. And I can't speak to those, but I will say that I have never regretted getting a social work degree or license, because it has just, like, you can literally do anything and work with people, work with kids. You can do play therapy. Like, every door is open to whatever you want it to look like. And so once I got into, were you going to ask a question?
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna probably ask what you were about to say. Once you got into it, did you know, or were you just excited? Did you choose it because it was so broad and you thought, I'll get the education and figure out what I want to do later? Or did you know, like, I want to do therapy, this is exactly what I want to do from the get-go?
I knew what I wanted to do only because my advisor in college had been very intentional in helping me, because I said, this is what I want to do. I want to do counseling.
Yeah.
I had a non-traditional college experience. Like, after my freshman year, I moved home and I dropped out for 2 years because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went back and did a community college for a year and I just had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Other people, I felt like they were more successful only because they were shooting right through college. It seemed so comfortable for them. It seemed so easy, and mine wasn't. I had no idea. And I think that's kind of a theme I saw in my whole life. I didn't feel like I was doing the same as other people who seemed to be thriving in different areas. I never really fit into that. I think we've seen that as a theme in a lot of people who've struggled in addiction. You just never feel like you really fit in. Not that if you don't fit in, you're also going to have issues, but that's how I felt for a long time. And so all these other people were so successful. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So once I figured it out, I was already like a sophomore in college, but a couple of years older because I'd taken some time off.
Gotcha.
So I knew I wanted to work with children because that 2-year hiatus I worked in a daycare
Mm.
and loved it, but knew that's not what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted it to involve children. Now, how it's evolved is more opened up the field of adolescents and adults. Not so much kids, but I love working with little ones, and I love working with 90-year-old people. Like it's so I always knew once I got started in psychology and social work, I always knew I wanted to do counseling. So when I went into the master's program, I immediately started the clinical track, looking for agencies that would give me, experience in that.
Very cool. So, so moving forward, what did life throw at you through your 20s? And you said you didn't. So, what age were you when you did your master's? And when, take us on through that, and where the train wreck started.
It's always been a train wreck.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I think I can't really, 23 when I started grad school. So I looked around me, and my friends had already graduated. A few had gotten married.
Yeah.
And I was just starting grad school, and nobody else at the time had been through grad school. I was kind of like the first one in my group. My brother was the first of my family to ever graduate college. And then I went on and got my master's. So it was a different experience for our family. So when I moved to Nashville, that's kind of where things started. When I moved to Nashville, since I hadn't had that typical college experience of being wild, because I lived at my parents' house,
Right.
I moved in with my very best friend since childhood. She was going through a divorce. And so it was kind of like I would equate it to the first year of college or something.
Yeah.
We were, young, we were single, whatever. So I did start drinking, I still drank through grad school, but again, I didn't drink excessively.
Yeah.
I just didn't. Where things started picking up on drinking was when I got out of grad school and started working as a therapist. My first job out of grad school was at a treatment center for adolescent boys. And it was like a level 3 lockdown in outside of Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And it was eye-opening. It was really hard to work there because all of these kids, and it was from age 8 to 18 with boys who were in foster care, legal issues, DCS involvement. I think it's not that I started excessively drinking, but I started drinking a little bit more because it was a very stressful environment.
Mm-hmm.
And saw that a lot of times the kids there were great. It was the families who had issues.
Yeah.
And I was in family counseling and got cussed out several times, which was new to me. And so I think it opened some, doors to worlds I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
I'd been very sheltered as a child in a lot of ways. So seeing these kids who have gone through so much tragedy a lot of times and seeing some injustice, but the kids themselves being great, it was hard to process as a new therapist. Yeah. It was really hard to process because they were great. The kids were great. So, and in this time, I had started dating somebody, and after grad school, we moved in together. So, I was starting life as an adult. That was new. That was kind of new. I had to, I don't know how this plays in, but I had to learn how to do things for myself as an adult. Even up until I never made a dentist appointment until I was 22.
Yeah.
My mom is so great. She would take care of everything.
Right.
So I was like, how do you do that? Mom, what do I say when they answer?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I started life as an adult and I got married. And then when things started picking up on the drinking is when I had my daughter, Sophia. I had a very normal pregnancy, but when I was giving birth, they discovered a kind of rare complication that they don't see sometimes on ultrasounds. And so after I gave birth to her, like it was normal, I almost died because, yeah, it was, yeah, no, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but it's, I had to work through that a lot, and I didn't realize how much trauma that actually caused me until years later in treatment. But I think it's called placenta accreta, where your placenta, it won't detach, like when they're trying to just, the rest of the birth process, childbirth process, it wouldn't detach. And since they hadn't detected it before, they didn't realize at first what they were really dealing with. And I think they waited too long, or almost too long, thankfully, to take me to the OR. And so what happened was I had a very calm sense that I was about to die.
Wow.
And so in the room with me, it was kind of like a live show. I let my mom come in there when I was giving birth, my best friend, Carrie, my husband, and his mother. So I had a full gallery of people watching the process, but they were also watching the process.
So,
of me.
so this is something that you found out right before you went into labor.
No,
And
after labor.
okay.
Like while they were trying, like Sophia was born, she was super perfect. And then they were like, oh, she has this other thing.
Yeah.
Listen, that won't detach. So, I have very vivid memories of them wheeling me to the OR, and I saw my brother and my sister-in-law, my mom and my dad, and I remember telling each of them, I love you. Take care of Sophia. And
wow.
So thank God, it worked. It worked out. It was okay, and they were great. The hospital was amazing afterward, and so supportive. But I didn't realize how scary that was until later, and I developed really bad postpartum depression, really bad, and nobody I knew had gone through that. So this kind of set it up for. I started drinking more. Again, not to excess. I had a baby to take care of.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to relax after work, like everybody. I would have a couple of glasses of wine when I made dinner. But also I was going through this postpartum depression that nobody else had experienced or knew how to handle. And this would also set it up for when I was struggling. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew how to help me. And so I struggled for a good year and a half, 2 years with postpartum depression. I got on a medication that helped tremendously, and my parents were supportive, and my husband at the time was as supportive as he knew how to be.
Yeah.
And so we got through that, and life went on. But I think that after that, life went back to kind of normal. My daughter was thankfully, a perfect baby, no sickness, no colic. I also was grateful I didn't have that kind of issue with a newborn that a lot of people deal with, that they had issues or sickness or anything like that. And I never did with her. But it was just kind of life.
Yeah.
Life started happening.
Well, life and unresolved trauma.
That too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that too. And I think that's one thing, not that I used humor with, but I did feel like I dismissed a lot of my pain because nobody else really acknowledged it. And so when you're not validated, like, my mom would too, as much as she knew how. But again, nobody had dealt with this before. And so nobody knew how to me feel really supported, and I didn't know how to tell them to. So
Well,
I felt like I just needed to get over it.
I think I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think this is a great opportunity to highlight how there are healthy, natural things like humor that we have that are so good for us, that our psyche automatically can use at times as
Mhm.
survival when we don't have the tools at our disposal to face what's needing to be faced. So for instance, trauma, like you're struggling, you got humor, it's helping you to survive, but it did not fix the problem. Sometimes we have a tool that's good and healthy and can be our life raft until we get to the thing that's actually going to pull us out of the water.
That's so true. That's a really
And
good point.
so I think it's important to note that um, not all things are meant, not all things that can be used for survival or used for healing and vice versa are always the right tool for different things. They can be used the same way, either in a negative, sometimes in negative in a negative way, sometimes
Yeah.
in a positive way.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And throughout the next few years, that's when the drinking escalated.
Yeah.
But through that time, I kind of lost who I was. I was now like the mom. I was now like the wife. I didn't feel like I had an identity anymore. And I was still struggling, but didn't really know that it was bad enough that I should probably have gotten help, like a therapist. Anyway, I was just going through the day. I don't think I had much humor in my life.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm so ridiculous now, because it's like, I'm back.
Right.
So, fast forward to, life. And I think my drinking really, really changed and got bad and I don't really have a specific reason, in like 2015. That's when things kind of escalated.
Mm-hmm.
I was drinking, and I don't doubt that I was drinking too much, but it wasn't interfering really with a whole lot of things. I still got up and did daily things. I got my daughter ready for school. I got myself ready for work. I came home. I brought her. I made dinner. Like, I still did everything. And so it was the summer of 2015 that a couple of things had happened where I was drinking just way too much. And my family kind of had a little intervention. And that's where back to my childbirth situation, where people didn't know what to do. Ashley's got postpartum depression, but what is that, and why can't she snap out of it? What am I supposed to do? Like, people didn't know what to do. I had a lot of friends who had already had children.
Right.
They were like, I'm fine. They didn't know what to do with their friend who was struggling.
Yeah.
So now, again, 2015, you find out after your family confronts you, or however it happens for people, that your friends were really concerned. And I was like, huh? Why didn't y'all tell me? My best friend, I was like, I'm not going to drink anymore. And she started crying. She was like, I've been so worried about you. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? But people probably didn't know how to tell me that.
Right.
Happy hour was happy hour. I just maybe drank a few more. And I had a friend that did that too. So I didn't think it was just me, But you tell yourself everything, like, whatever.
Right. Well, and again, you watch somebody, it can be hard when you've never dealt with that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're watching somebody drown. And again, they're using a survival technique that's keeping them afloat, but they're still in the water and at any moment could fall down. Right. I'm just all about some analogies. So that's why I got to put that in the picture. So, and they see that, you're drowning, struggling in this depression. You're not yourself, haven't found your identity. Where's Ashley? But also alcohol, it's causing problems, but it's also one of the only things that's holding her afloat. And who am I to step in and say, stop or whatever? Because I don't know what this is. And it scares me just
Yeah,
as much as, you know what I mean? Like it's,
of course.
and you know, I don't know if your friends necessarily were experiencing this, but if I had $1 for every time I heard, and I hate that it's still this way, but I think it is in a lot of cases, people who have not experienced a direct relation to someone suffering from postpartum issues, depression, mental health, postpartum mental health issues. I think it's very common in my experience that there's just this shared sentiment of she just is being moody and needs to snap out of it, or that that postpartum has become a thing and she's clinging on to it and letting it be her whatever. And I think that's something that goes unspoken a lot to the person, but but the sentiment is there in society a lot. And as a man, I get exposed to it, I think, more than probably women do. I see it and I hear it. And I use my voice when and where I can, always, because of what I've been exposed to and I know about the truth of postpartum. But
Yeah.
you're sharing so vulnerably how real it is, and I'm so glad. I had no idea that this was part of your story, and I'm so glad that
Not
you're
many
sharing.
people do. And I will say this, when I first started telling my story, I left out that part of childbirth because I thought I just need to get over that.
See,
And then I
exactly.
realized,
That is exactly what I'm saying. It's
no,
the pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's something that you need to exert your willpower, deal with it. It's
yeah,
shameful. You weren't strong enough, and that's
exactly.
why.
Exactly. And I'm not ever saying that my family wasn't supportive or loved me, my friends, my ex husband. They just didn't know how to support me.
Yep.
Their support sounded like, well, come on, just come on,
Yep.
get up,
Yeah.
get through it. That was their support. And they were trying hard. They just didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And that echoed loudly when it came to struggling with alcohol.
Hell yeah. How
Because
many times are we told since childhood when we get hurt, just walk it off?
yeah, yeah. And I'll never walk anything off. Let
Mm.
me tell you something. You're gonna hear it when I fall. I'm very dramatic, and I need that dramatic. I need to act dramatic for 10 minutes, and then I promise I'm fine. But
I
you
love it.
better let me
Yeah.
be. And my friends all know that. People who know me know that. But so here's another thing that everybody I feel like experiences that haven't had their own experiences with addictions. If you'll just get help, fix you, and we will all be fine. We'll all be happy. Things are
Mm.
going to be perfect. If you'll get help, you'll stop drinking. We're all going to be great.
Lies.
Woo! Lies. You a lie. I mean, but you hear it so much.
Yep.
My self worth bottomed out.
Mm-hmm.
Bottomed out because everybody was saying it. It wasn't just one person
Yep.
saying you're the problem. It was a lot of people saying you're the problem.
Yep.
And I was like, you're right. I'm the problem. I just need to go to treatment and get help. So,
Which
like
is
a lot of,
true.
well, of course,
Right,
no,
right,
no,
right. But I love
of
that you're
course.
speaking to this because, oh my God, the family systems, the family dynamics, the dysfunction and the denial about it. Woo,
And
ma'am.
and yes, because I'm also a counselor who should know all that. But when it's happening to you,
Yep.
you can't recognize it as much. And then everybody's agreeing that you're the problem.
Yeah.
They want to help so much, but they don't know they don't know what to do. That's another reason I like telling my story because people, family, friends need to hear it's okay not to know what to do,
Yeah.
but you need to find out what to do to help.
Which means
Because
You have to ask for help, right? Like,
let me tell you something. And I'm the worst about asking for help.
oh, I'm right there with you. Not anymore, but yes.
Oh, not anymore. Oh yeah, not anymore. But of course, well, I still struggle with that
Yeah.
sometimes. It's just like a little thing. I'm like, get over it. Or I'm like, wait a minute, I don't need to get over it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear about it. I'm gonna post about it on Instagram. Hold up, let me go make a meme. But so I did go to treatment, and a lot of people who the first when I first went to treatment, I didn't worry about myself. I didn't think I really needed it that bad. I was fine.
Mm,
And so what I did was become everybody's therapist there.
of course.
I fixed everybody else's stuff. They would come to me. So what I remembered was, or what I rediscovered, is that I'm a leader. I am a leader. My personality, I want to be in front helping, leading the crew to help, let's all get sober. I mean, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. No. But look at you.
Right.
Let me help you talk about your parents. But I'm fine. I met one person, and I've made good friends. I've lost good friends. That's been a real challenge too. I had met somebody's dad one weekend, and he thought I worked there because I was talking about my friend, but I was talking like I was the therapist, not another patient.
Right. So did that get addressed? I know a lot of times in treatment, we try and catch those. It's not that abnormal for us to have the treatment superstar, that comes in and does everything right to look good.
And I was questioning the therapist. Why aren't you doing this? What do you mean you're talking? I mean, I was ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
I could do not to focus on myself.
Yeah. So when was it that you did start to focus on you? Was it in treatment or was it after?
It took me a long time to accept what my life had to change.
Yeah.
That I had been given a million chances by family and friends. I would say to people, I would take 10 2020s over one 2016.
Wow.
That year was it. I didn't get sober that year, but my life fell apart that year.
Yeah.
People were tired of me, and I hear people, and I agree with this. You're not going to get sober until you get tired of your own stuff. You got to get tired of your own BS. And that's true. And I wasn't, but everybody else was.
Said similarly, I love this saying that it applies to just our human nature, not just addicts. Until the pain of staying the same hurts worse than the pain of changing, then I will change. But I got to be in enough pain.
Oh gosh.
That being the same hurts too bad.
And I stayed in pain for a long time. And so it took me a really long time to stop blaming other people for my life falling apart. I did it. Did everybody handle it right? I don't mean right. I mean, could it have been handled better? Yeah. But in another way, I don't blame, that summer was just really bad with drinking, and people had just had it. Also, that fall, in September, my dad had started having some really bizarre medical things happen. He couldn't swallow. He couldn't, just a couple of really random symptoms. And so he'd gone to the hospital in Jackson, Wisconsin, and they were like, well, we don't know what's happening. He's fine. And so they sent him home. And then the next day, he started having really, really bad, he couldn't stand up. A lot of stuff, but nobody. So he went to Vanderbilt. And so that was either late August or early September. And
was this 2017 or 16?
16.
Okay.
So during that time, my partner had also just had it. I don't blame him for that. he was mad at, I mean, obviously angry with me for a really long time. And I don't blame him for that either. Could things have been handled differently? Yes, but they weren't. And that's just the way it happened. And I did not make it easier on anybody. I was chaos. And I heard that a lot. Like, you just live in chaos. And finally I realized, like, I am the chaos in a lot of these situations.
Mhm.
Like, I was out of control. Again, when I write that book, it'll have all those stories. Y'all have so many stories that, again, humor is important for me, because I'll tell people any stories about my drinking or whatever that anybody want to hear. I have a million, but I have to spin it to make it funny, because it ain't funny. You do some really stupid things.
Yeah.
And looking back, and I'm like, I don't know. Who else hides like a box of wine behind a real estate sign in a yard for sale a mile down the street and walks up, just things that happen, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my ex had filed for divorce. He'd gone out of town. He filed for divorce. And I didn't know that happened. I knew it was probably coming, because he'd had it. I don't blame him. But during that time, my dad was in the ICU dying. And nobody still knew what was happening. Vanderbilt was like, your dad will be a case study. Like, we don't know. They had every team in the world in his room. And he was only in the hospital for 6 weeks. But that was the time when everything started happening.
Yeah.
And so, and my mom did not leave the hospital.
Sure.
I had to leave my house. I lived in a hotel for a couple of weeks. And, my daughter didn't understand. Nobody understood, and what do you say? Like, I'll forever be working on my relationship with her.
Mm-hmm.
At least she knows now that I'm there.
Yeah.
I'll go into that in a minute. But also, so and mom couldn't be there to support me. She was there with my dad. I couldn't support her.
Yep.
I was about to jump off a cliff.
Yeah.
And my brother was trying, but he was just there for my mom. So in October, the first week in October, on the 5th, my dad died. And so I relapsed hard. Not right then, because I had to be there with my mom, but I did. And we were already starting divorce stuff. And so the week after my dad died, I had to start like an IOP program. Talk about the Debbie Downer in the group, introduce yourself and tell us what happened. Well, my dad died last week.
Yeah.
And I had to leave my daughter. It's terrible.
Yeah.
The consequences of our decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that year was horrible. And I still relapsed in 2017. So it was really the very beginning of 18 where I was like, you don't really have any more choices.
Mm-hmm.
It's either you get better or just go away.
Right.
Just go. So, and everybody asks, like, what was your moment? Did you have a aha moment or a light bulb? And I'm like, I didn't. I went to Kentucky and lived there in a hilarious version of a sober living house for 3 months. That is where I remembered who I was. That is where my humor came back. It was an insanely odd place. It was like, here's where I learned accountability. You're responsible for your own stuff. Here's where I learned responsibility. Here's where I learned that you're never going to get away. People are going to call you out on your stuff.
Yeah.
I'd been to this bougie rehab, the year before, where it was in the program they had, which I desperately loved. Like, and I don't say bougie lightly. but there's not many rules. And we lived in this beautiful house for 30 days and had to like cook dinner. Like that was our chore. Like, it's time to clean up. And I'd be like, I'm just not going to do that today. I'm not going to do that. No. Ashley, go make your bed. I'd love to, but I'm about to go outside. It was just,
Right.
I had no, I wasn't ready. But that's where I met a couple of really important people that helped me work through stuff. Tammy Roth saved my life. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but
No, huh?
oh,
Oh,
let me tell
Tammy
you something.
Roth. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
Tammy.
I thought I misunderstood the last name. Yes. What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful woman.
Yeah, and so that's where I worked through my postpartum stuff
Wow.
that I didn't even know was still there. And my dad, whew, she got me on the road to saving myself.
Yeah.
So then when 2018 came and I really did it for real,
Yep.
I had met amazing women and actually did things differently. Because we had real chores too. I couldn't just say no, thank you.
Yep.
It was like military style.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of crazy. And I swear to God, I have about 1 million stories, but it was what I needed. And I didn't, and I will say this, and I hear people say like God took the desire to drink away from me, and I never believed it, number one, or understood it, but it happened. I never thought I would stay sober. Nobody really thought I would stay sober. I don't think anybody did. A couple of people told me several times, it's not if you'll relapse, it's when you're going to relapse. Like, I'm waiting, just waiting. But I don't know how long they'll have to wait, but it's going to be a long time because I never looked back. I came back to nothing.
Yeah.
I came back to, I had resigned my job so that I could go here.
Yeah.
I mean, to continue, not here. So I didn't have a job. I didn't have any money. I didn't have an apartment anymore because I, didn't have any money. But so I was going to have to move back to Milan. And at first, not at first, all the time, it scared me to death. What? I'm moving back with no job. You're like, what are people going to think? And then I finally got to the place where I was like, I do not care what people think. And that's been a life changer. Let me tell you.
Right?
That's a game changer. I have discovered who I really am, and she's pretty amazing.
Yep.
A little fluffy, but we'll work on that. Like, that's fine. And like, who I want to be. Now I'm 3 years sober, miraculously, and I have never once relapsed. Honestly, I've never really thought about relapsing. I mean, I think about it, of course, but
but considered it as an option that you wanted to pursue.
Exactly.
Isn't it amazing when we hit that place of, and I think it's, honestly, I don't know how anybody.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, thanks, Siri.
I'm not sure either, Siri, anything.
So, I don't know how anybody could stay sober that doesn't go through this process of getting to that place of being forced to accept, to see yourself for the flaws and all, and practice radical acceptance in the fact that I am bringing this to wherever I go. This is me. I have nothing. I've screwed everything up in my past, and I'm putting one foot in front of the other today, and I have no freaking clue what the future holds, but I'm trying. And that place of radical acceptance and vulnerability is where exactly what you're talking about, where that true healing and magic happens. Where I believe the higher power I call God is able to come in and work in that space, but not until we get there.
Exactly. And I've had a million chances to get there. I also believe God he will give you the opportunity to change. But if you don't do it, like, he's not going to do it for you. Like, I feel like he's going to help. He's going to put himself available. You know, he's going to open these doors. But if you don't do it, like, that's on you.
That's right.
And the vocal acceptance and the amount of accountability that I have now is life-changing.
And is it not so one of the most gratifying things in the world to know that you are taking accountability for everything?
I think it takes people aback a little bit because they don't believe it at first. Of course, you've given them no reason to.
Yeah.
You know, and when I had been working the steps and did amends to people, I had to rebuild every relationship. Every relationship.
I get it.
So, and with my daughter, I have worked. I mean, that's my greatest joy. I will always be making up for those couple of years. I mean, like, I'm not saying I only drank 2 years, but I'm saying that was a short window of time that everything fell apart. But I'll forever be proving to her that I'm not going to leave her life for a little bit anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never let her down. I mean, like, not like I do admit, like, Sophia, I'm not perfect.
Right.
Like, I'm going to make mistakes, but let's talk about it.
Yep.
I talked to her about my family history. She's 12. She's at a very vulnerable age.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Things are starting to come up, questions, whatever. She's not great at expressing herself right now. You know, she's very introverted. And you might not believe it, but I'm very introverted. Until I get comfortable, then hello. But but really I am introverted. So I can see how she really, you know, she doesn't want to ask questions, but I talked to her. When I went to get my 1-year chip, she went with me. You know, I want her to see that I'm working my butt off forever to be that mom she can look back on and be like, well, she was ridiculous, but she was always there for me.
But also you're preparing her to live in the real world where adults have real problems. And unlike decades in the past where we just pull up by the bootstraps, walk it off, you're teaching her what I think is one of the most healthy things is that real adults in real life have real problems and there are real solutions. So let's show you what some of those are. That's so cool. I think it's awesome that you're doing that with her.
Well, I'm also very truthful about things I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, one night at dinner, we had gone to someplace here in town and she said, what are taxes? Like, why do you have to? I was like, I don't know. Ask your dad. He's very good at math. But then what her question really was is how much do things really cost?
Yeah.
What do you make? And I think back on my parents, and I think I asked my dad one time, like, how much he made, and they wouldn't talk about it.
Right.
They wouldn't even tell me if they were Republican or Democrat. I was like, I'm 11. I don't care what you are. They wouldn't tell you because you just didn't talk about it.
Right. I love the theme of what you're talking about is how you've learned to embrace transparency, talking about things, opening up. On that topic, okay, so my next question for you, we're almost out of time, and I've got a handful of questions I want to ask you before we close. What was a significant thing that happened to you in sobriety that you didn't expect?
That I didn't expect. Well, I'll tell you a couple of things that I didn't expect and people don't tell you. That you're going to be feeling those consequences for a while. You may have made a lot of bad decisions, and will you get through them? Yes. Will it be as quick as you think it's going to be? Nope. You might feel it for years. I'm still feeling some consequences, and I'm 3 years sober, but I'm dealing with them differently. People, you know, yes, the promises come true, but it's still going to hurt. Like, positive change happens, but it's still painful.
That's right.
Growth is painful, and nobody tells you that, or, you know, nobody told me that, because you come home and you're different, or you work your program and you're different. And I'm working my program. I have a therapist. I am doing a lot of work, but you're coming home to people who haven't.
That's right.
Because you were the problem. So you're coming home to people who still see you as that problem or see that you've changed and now they're starting to trust you. But then you lay down boundaries and they're like, what? Or you lay down like, this is how it's going to be now. And people don't like that very much.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Well, and because there's other things at play, we're so
Mhm.
ingrained, like you said, to believe that we're 100% of the problem. So when we start to get
Exactly.
better, lay down boundaries, and other people's stuff
Yeah.
continues, projection happens, and they throw that on us. All those
Yeah.
things. So another reason why it's so important when we get sober to have a support system, to get a therapist, to
I have the
be,
best support system.
yeah,
Not
absolutely.
because one of the problems that I always have is reaching out.
Yeah.
So when you have issues, I built a great sober community of women. And that's also women that aren't sober but have been friends for years that support me. And that is one of the biggest things. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, next thing. What was the worst thing you survived in addiction?
Mm-mm-mm. I don't know. Honestly, it's not one thing. The worst thing I have survived so far is losing time. There was a period of time when I had lost some time with my daughter,
Yeah.
and it was devastating. Like, I don't know the word that says it enough.
Right.
Like, losing my dad was horrible. He was such an amazing man, and he believed in me, and he didn't get to live to see me sober. That has been really hard to work through. But yeah, I think the biggest, no matter what else has happened, losing a little time with my daughter has really, like, it's like hitting a brick wall.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
But
What is the scariest thing you made it through in recovery?
in recovery, you know what? It's not like things have been easy, but once you really do refocus your life and stuff, I rebuilt my career.
Mm-hmm.
The place I work now, most of the people know my story, or maybe not all the details, but they knew going in who they were hiring, and they have been so supportive. It's been very breathtaking, the acceptance. And so it was scary to rebuild a life.
Not knowing if you'd be accepted for who you were in your past and all the things you're bringing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a life that did not turn out like you think it's going to. That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Yes, ma'am.
My life looked really great a few years ago on paper, but it wasn't. And now it's like really different, but it's happier.
Yeah, it is. Well, speaking of happier, I think you might have mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to ask it to you again. What is your greatest joy now in recovery?
My greatest joy is getting my life back, getting my family and friends back.
Mm-hmm.
It's being able to accept myself for who I was, that hurt person that went through some stuff. And then now, wherever I am in life, being free to feel like it's okay to talk about it. I'm always going to be very transparent. I'm always going to be open. I probably overshare a lot, but that's okay too. I'd rather tell you too much about what I've been through than too little.
Yeah.
And not get the point across.
Yeah.
But I think that's it. Just feeling like I'm who I'm supposed to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Okay. I love to ask this question to all of our guests on Recovery Stories because I think it's so important. Every time somebody comes and tells their story, it is my hope that there are people, and I know there are people watching and listening that say, wow, Ashley's story is, that so much of that is me. That is me. That is me. What would you say to that person or those people as a last word of encouragement who are still struggling?
I think that's why I do love to go to treatment centers or, to talk to people, because when I was struggling so bad, I needed to hear that it was going to get better. I needed to hear that things could be okay because you're a mess. So what I tell people is that it's going to be okay. You have to get up and do some work, but your life is going to be so much better.
That's right.
It's hard to hear. It's hard to even process that when you're suffering, but to tell them that now I do things 100% differently than I did 3.5 years ago. That is the joy that they can have too.
That's right.
And I'll be there to help them. I feel like I would help anybody who wants to get better. Like, let's go through it together.
I believe that. Ashley, thank you so much for your time today. Vulnerable sharing.
I didn't even cuss.
You are a joy, and it has been a joy having you on here.
Thank you so
truly.
much.
Absolutely. So I always like to leave everybody with this last thought that you are always only one decision away from a completely different life. And it is never too late to start loving yourself. So
I love that.
Yeah. I stole it from somebody else. No, I'm not that creative.
Okay.
I didn't come
I'll
up with
put it on Instagram. It's fine.
All right, everybody. With that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we are out.
Thanks.
For more information on today's episode, check out the show notes. Recovery Stories is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's Rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 877-351-7504 or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please share with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. We are grateful for you and hope that you have been encouraged by today's episode. As always, remember you are only one decision away from a completely different life, and it is never too late to start loving yourself.